him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk him off. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Anthony Witrado. Shout out to everybody joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We greatly appreciate you. Anthony, welcome back to your normal recording space. Excuse me. And the voice is sounding a little bit better than the last time we saw you, so we're glad to have you back at 100%.
I appreciate it. It's getting there. It's still not, in the morning it's pretty rough. Late at night it's pretty rough. So it's getting better though. It's getting better.
I love it. Well, I want to start the show real quick, and I want to give a shout out to a guy who has often been in the chat. That would be Jason Austin. He sent me this hat, which was the Jackie Robinson giveaway hat from last season. And on one hand, I want to say kudos to the Dodgers because the giveaway quality has gotten far better than when I was a kid, Anthony, because this hat is legit. So shout out to Jason. I appreciate it. And I want to give a shout out. He is the chef owner at Italian Table. So if you're ever in Alberta, Canada, Lethbridge, looking for some Italian food, he won't say it. He's too humble. But the chicken Parmesan, I've been told, is much better than IHOP. He says he's not positive about it. I'm going to go out and say his chicken Parmesan is better than that. So thank you, Jason, for the hat. But, I mean, Anthony, I got to say, the hats that they're giving out now, I mean, the stuff they used to give away was like garbage. This is a real hat.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks great. We got a hoodie last year. I didn't get it. Somebody got it and I saw it. And I was surprised. I was like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah,
they try to Guggenheim stepping it up. All right.
They're stepping it up for all the money they're spending. Some of that, I mean, they're not spending money on these giveaways, but they're forcing the people who are doing them give it away. So Again, shout out to Jason. We got a lot to talk about tonight. You may have heard the Dodgers signed a reliever. No, not that reliever. That was a couple days ago. New reliever today. He's also very, very good. We're going to get into Kirby Yates signing. Some of the fallout of that to the roster. I know a lot of people are asking about, like, how do all these pieces fit on the 40-man, on the 26-man with guys who can be sent up and down. So hopefully by the end of this, you're going to be educated on all that. We're going to talk Hall of Fame stuff. Some guys got in. One guy should have been unanimous, wasn't unanimous. We'll have some thoughts on that as well. But I want to start here, Anthony. I was going through some old notes, and in November, Dave Roberts went on a podcast, and I'm blanking on I think it was Mookie Betts' podcast, and he was talking about his wish list for the offseason, and it just had me laughing looking back at this, Anthony. He said, first thing on the wish list, in no particular order, he said, I want to bring back a particular bullpen arm. That would be Blake Trinan. Check. That one was secured. His next, he said, I want a high-leverage reliever. Well, Dave, I got good news for you. You didn't get one high-leverage reliever. You got two. Next was he wanted a starting pitcher. Dave, I got good news for you. You didn't get one. You got two. And last, he said, I want to bring back an outfielder who had some big home runs and who was from Latin America, of course, referring to Teoscar Hernandez. Oh, and Dave, they also went and got you two of those as well because Michael Conforto joined the team. I mean, how often, Anthony, does a manager say, these are the 4 things I want, and his general manager, his president of baseball operations says, you asked for 4, I'm going to give you 7.
This team is sparing no expense right now. And I don't say that just monetarily. Like, they are going out and they're going, you know what? It's the end of January. You guys don't want this dude? Come on, Kirby. Come on. And that's why the whole, the talk about, the Dodgers getting everyone, it just doesn't hold water because they gave everyone else a long runway. The season started November, and they said you got November, December, and almost all of January to go and get the guys you want. You couldn't do it. Well, they're still out there, so now they're free game.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, those other teams had a lot more time to think about this than the Dodgers because they were busy winning World Series championships, So it's not like some of these teams that had an extra 6 weeks to think about what their offseason was going to look like. So
exactly.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Kirby Yates again. The news today, Bob Nightingale reporting that the Dodgers have reached a tentative agreement with Kirby Yates. As we joked about right before coming on, it is worth noting that Bob Nightingale describes it as a tentative agreement. I think Fabian Ardaya, Ken Rosenthal, and Jack Harris have sort of confirmed it, but sort of not confirmed it either. They've said they're working towards a deal or they're making progress towards a deal, language like that. So Nightingale, for what it's worth, is reporting it. He works for a big organization. He's a big name, so we're going to go with it. But if for some reason there's a 1, 2, 3, 5% chance that this deal falls apart, take it all with a grain of salt. We haven't had Jeff Passan and others come through and say, yeah, this is definitely happening. But let's talk as if it has happened, Anthony. Kirby Yates is a guy who turns 38 years old in March. But let me give you some numbers on Yates that have impressed me. The first one, Fangraphs had this one. He's one of only 3 relievers in Major League history to have more than one season in which he had 40 or more saves and an ERA below 1.25. Last season, 1.17 ERA with a 0.83 whip. He was 100th percentile in expected ERA and expected batting average, 98th percentile in strikeout rate, 95th percentile in barrel rate. Simply put, Anthony, this is a guy that last season was one of, if not top 5, the best relievers in Major League Baseball, and he's the second best guy the Dodgers have signed in the last few days.
Yeah. And the third best guy they've gotten in a week or so. Yeah, it really is amazing the way they're just going after this thing. I mean, we've come a long way from the Frank McCourt era,
yes,
right?
Yes, we have.
To this, and you know, this started as soon as this new ownership group came on. You know, making big blockbuster trades. You know, and then bringing in the front office and putting that together. You know, going out and getting Mookie Betts. You know, it's been a continuous sort of like, we're going to prove to you, the fan base, that we are here to win.
Yeah,
we might have the deepest pockets, but we're also the smartest. We've built the best player development system. We've built one of the best scouting departments, pro and amateur. And we've told our guys, you now have the green light to go and get everything that you want to go get. Like what's on that Dave Roberts wish list. You know, I'm sure Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes wrote out the same kind of deal, and they're just checking them off now because for everyone who said, you know, however many years ago, we didn't do anything that winter or didn't do enough that winter, or the couple of trade deadlines that passed and they were like, you know what, not for us. They're making up for it now. This was the reason. They had an eye on all of this stuff. You know, they didn't hear of Roki Sasaki last year. They heard of him 5 years ago, you know, and so they were eyeing these last 2 winners, the last one a year ago and this current one. And they benchmarked everything that they had and said, yes, we're going to still be aggressive where we can be, but we're aiming right there. And if you're available, we're coming after you if we think you can help us. And I watched a bunch of stuff today through podcasts and on YouTube, just sort of listening to like sort of the national chatter and other teams. I listened to way too many other teams' podcasts today.
I love it.
Just to see what the general chatter was about the Dodgers and sort of what that sentiment was. And one of the thoughts I had was that, you know, they didn't just like take out a bazooka and start spraying the free agent market. They got a long gun sniper rifle and were precise as all hell picking these guys off the market. And you know, last week it wasn't time for Kirby Yates. They might have been interested, but they were still going to wait and see. And they got Tanner Scott. Still no buzz about Kirby Yates, huh? Okay, we're going to readjust our sights now. And they're going out and they're doing this. And it's been an absolutely masterclass in like just tactical precision. It's been so impressive to see what that front office has been able to do. And again, you do not do that unless your ownership group says, go have fun.
Totally. Yeah. And it is kudos to the ownership group and obviously Shohei Ohtani's contract and the revenue that he's bringing in off the field all contributes here. But we've talked about it a lot on this show, you know, that it's not just about how rich your owners are, but there's a lot of factors here as well. Before we get more into that, I just want to throw some more stats at you from Kirby Yates. This is a guy who missed most of 2020, had Tommy John surgery in 2021, missed most of 2022. He comes back in 2023, kind of his first year fully back. Strikeout rate was awesome. Everything else was pretty bad. The barrel rate was not good. The exit velocities were not good. 3.3 ERA, 1.2 whip. Like, he was fine. 2024, though, you could look at and say, man, this is an outlier to see those numbers, a 1.17 ERA in 61 games with the .83 whip. Or you could say this is a guy now in his second year back from Tommy John surgery, finally feels like he has his body underneath him and goes out and performs. As far as the scouting report on Yates, everything begins and ends with his splitter. It's a pitch he learned halfway through his career. I read some articles where he joked about before splitter Kirby Yates and after splitter Kirby Yates. Since he started throwing that pitch in 2017, his strikeout rate, 36%, is the sixth best mark in baseball among guys who have thrown as many innings as him. His fastball sits at like 93 miles an hour, and yet guys are hitting 112 off of it. So this isn't, yes, 38. I understand that's going to scare some people. He's 38 years old. The fastball is like 93, 94, hasn't changed a ton, and yet incredibly effective. Again, 112 batting average against on that one. The splitter, the same, if not slightly better. And then this was interesting to me, Anthony, splits. Like, how does he fare against lefties versus against righties? That splitter is believed to be like the worst pitch, like I should say, the best pitch you could throw to left-handed hitters. So even though he's a righty, lefties hit 081 against him last year. Righties hit 137. So it's a guy who can pitch both sides of the plate. The fastball is not going to overpower you, but because of kind of how he throws it, where he throws it, and obviously the fear of that splitter, two-pitch guy,
yeah,
the combination is, yes, a 38, soon-to-be 38-year-old, but again, I can't say this more clearly, was one of the best pitchers in baseball. His expected numbers, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, expected ERA, were basically on par with Mason Miller, who some people think might be the best reliever in all Major League Baseball. Like, that's how good Kirby Yates was last season, and according to Bob Nightingale, going to be a Dodger this year.
Yeah, he's been impressive. He was a guy, I think, on all of our radar if like they passed on Tanner Scott or if somebody else signed him, right? Like, we were going off the old way of thinking for this Dodgers front office when it comes to free agent relief pitching and, short deals, rather spend the money on the average versus the long-term kind of contract.
Yeah.
And it seemed, with Tanner Scott, they sort of broke that mold. Now going after Kirby Yates, it's probably going to be a little bit more of the same. And so again, like they have seen Moneyball was all about market inefficiencies, right? It wasn't about like getting the guy who, it was about like paying cheaply for things that other organizations were overlooking.
Yeah.
And it seems like right now, other organizations are the inefficiency is going out and spending money for good players.
Right.
And the Dodgers are going and doing that. And in the past, it used to be like, right, go find the Chris Taylors, go find the Max Muncies, go find the Justin Turners, or turn bullpen arms that no one's ever heard about into like borderline all-star type of players.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And now they're sitting back and going, no one's going to offer Tanner Scott a contract. Arguably the best reliever in baseball. No one's going to offer Kirby Yates a contract. Arguably the best reliever in baseball. Well, okay.
Right.
If you guys aren't going to spend the money and you're going to leave these guys just out there, well, we're going to give them a call.
Yeah.
And now people are crying that the Dodgers have too many players. You guys had 2.5 months to go and make this happen.
Totally. And one interesting thing on the inefficiency note, we've got an interview with myself and Lance Brozdowski that's going to get posted tomorrow that I encourage people to check out, because I think Lance is one of the smartest guys when it comes to pitching and understanding how pitching works, but he also is able to explain it in a language that people like me can understand. And one of the questions I asked him, as I looked at all of the guys the Dodgers signed on the pitching side this year, Blake Snell, Tanner Scott, and Kirby Yates. Obviously, Sasaki's in a different camp because we don't know a ton about his sort of profile, if you will. But those three guys, there's three numbers in common with all three of them. High strikeout / high swing and miss guys. Yeah. Incredibly good at limiting hard contact. But all three of them have one outlier thing in addition to those two that stood out to me. All three of them have very bad walk rates. Like bottom 10%, bottom 10% of Major League Baseball, all three of those guys, when it comes to how often they're walking guys. And so I asked Lance, I was like, Lance, is it possible that that's kind of the new quote unquote market inefficiency that maybe the Dodgers are noticing, is that for the longest time we have said, hey, walks are really, really bad. Can't have walks. Worst thing a relief pitcher could do is walk a guy. And yet when I read up on Blake Snell, when they signed him a couple months ago, and understand he throws meatballs less than any other pitcher in Major League Baseball, gets a ton of swing and miss and limits hard contact, I can understand when he says, I'm not really worried about walking a guy, because here's what walks do. They move that guy from home to first. If anybody's on base, they only move up if it's a force. There's no extra, and I'm not allowing extra base hits because I don't allow hard contact, and I'm probably going to get strikeout on the next guy anyways. And so it's possible to me, Anthony, and I threw this at Lance, and it's probably the first time I asked Lance a question that he was like, you know what? I don't have a great answer to that one if that's something they're looking at. He kind of off the cuff pointed out that last year the Dodgers bullpen was one of the worst in Major League Baseball at giving up barrels. So he goes, maybe they're looking and saying, let's just swing and miss, strike out, and walk guys, but no barrels, because barrels are what kill you in the 8th and 9th inning, not walks, right? And so just an interesting thing. You look, by the way, Alex Vesia, very similar profile. Michael Kopech, very similar profile as far as high swing and miss, strikeout, but walks can be an issue. So I don't know. Maybe it's just coincidental here, but could be an inefficiency, if you will, that the Dodgers have targeted.
Yeah, and it could be a little bit of knowing your personnel, right? Where they know the one, not elite area of this roster right now is its defense.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, all right, well, we'll take the walk versus the guy who might hit the ball in the gap, or, and so we're going to go for those weak contact kind of guys. Now it may just be, they may just sort of coincide and go hand in hand because these guys are so good anyway. But it's a benefit, right?
Yeah.
Your defense is not great probably. So you're going to give up, you're going to go out and get pitching that, sure, they may nibble and walk some guys, but they don't give up hard contact. They miss the barrel. There's a lot of swing and miss there. So there's that. And I also think that some, like, the Dodgers have done this on the offensive side.
Yeah.
Where guys get deep into counts, they will fall behind. It's been like this for since before COVID. And it's sort of been the ongoing evolution of the player development system with this front office. See a lot of pitches. It's okay if you get behind, that kind of thing. Max Muncy being the perfect example of like the 3 outcome kind of guy, where it's either he's going to strike out, he's going to walk, or he's going to hit a home run.
Yeah.
And they're taking, on the offensive side, they're taking those walks and saying those are going to offset our strikeouts. And then the home runs is where we'll win.
Yeah.
We'll win that money back. And now it seems like they may be doing that on the pitching side. All right, we're going to get guys who like to nibble, and they're nibbling because they don't give up hard contact. So, yeah, they're going to walk 4 guys per 9, something like that. But they're going to strike out 11 and 12.
Yeah.
And when the ball does get put in play, the other guy's not going to put the barrel on it.
Right.
I mean, and you're right. It could be something of an inefficiency because typically, what's the big number is like when you look at some of this stuff, you go, what's the strikeout to walk look like? And it's becoming a point now where you can't just look at that on its own.
Right. Yeah. Every day we're getting more context with baseball stats, and I think it's making us smarter. It's making us understand baseball a little bit more. It's not binary: walks bad, strikeouts good, right? It's what's
right.
The context of that. One interesting note.
Would you rather give in
right.
on, name an all-star offensive player?
Yeah.
Or would you rather try to reset the at bat? And if you can't do that, then you put him on first and you go up to the next guy with an even count and you go, you know what? I'm going to blow you away.
Totally. No, I think it's a fair question. David wants to know, not concerned at all with Yates' age. I would say this, David, 37, going to be 38 on paper scares me. What makes me feel better is that he's not a guy that relies on high velocity. So 93, 94, and he's been able to maintain that. That hasn't dipped. Yes, he's about to turn 38, but we're talking about the season he just had. So we're not 2 or 3 years removed from his best season. This was his second best season, if you could believe that. He was great, back in, I believe it was like 2017, 2018 range. But that's why I'm not overly concerned about his age. I would imagine this is a 1-year deal, and so there's some concern over the age. But to me, it's not an issue because of how good he just looked and because of the profile of the pitcher himself.
Yeah, I would say the profile matters here. Also, we don't know what the deal looks like.
Yeah.
If it's a 2-year deal, no problem with it. I don't think they're giving Kirby Yates 4.
Yeah, I would honestly be surprised if it's more than 1 at his age. But to your point, maybe he's good enough to have like a team option for the year 2
1
with
plus
a buyout
1
or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. But I agree with you. He's not a guy who relies on the stuff that's going to age poorly as he gets older. And he's just breaking out now. It wasn't like he's been doing this for 10 years already.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. By the way, Matthew Moreno, just tweeting that people have been asking about a Roki Sasaki press conference. Sportsnet LA is currently listing a Tanner Scott press conference for 2 p.m. tomorrow for anybody interested in that sort of a thing. So stay tuned. There have been rumors that Sasaki presser tomorrow. He's at the Laker game, as Miggy points out. Roki at the Lakers game. The aura is insane. Our guy Daniel Starkin, they're covering it for Lakers Nation's, got a photo. I believe he posted it of Roki Sasaki at the game. I believe Andrew Friedman and Brandon Gomes there with him. So cool stuff there. Laura says, was I the only one literally shocked by the Kirby Yates signing today? I underestimate the Dodgers front office. You kind of hinted at this earlier, Anthony. It's not really like your fault, Laura, because we've been trained over years and years and years and years that seemingly there's a limit to this stuff. And if you get one thing to break your way, then surely the next thing and the next thing and the next thing are not all going to break your way. And so it's hard to be shocked by anything the Dodgers do at this point, but I'd say I was pretty shocked that after Tanner Scott signed, the Dodgers were still active. Because again, if they signed Kirby Yates, we're probably talking about a deal that's like $12 million range on the AAV. Yeah. So we're nearing the luxury tax number of 400 million here with the Dodgers.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised by the Tanner Scott signing. I said on one of our shows, I did not think they were going to go after him. I thought, but part of it was because of that reliever philosophy, right? And contracts with that this front office has adhered to. So they go and do that. Okay. Now I think they're done. And then you wake up to Kirby Yates news and it's just like I had to double check that. Yeah. Like, am I seeing this correctly? Is that right? Like, is there a typo somewhere? I made sure that it was the real Bob Nightingale account that tweeted that out. Because I was shocked too. Like, no way I thought after the Tanner Scott move that this was going to be the next thing that happened.
Yeah. Hard to have seen it coming. And of course, this was met with, Anthony, the general response of, oh, here the Dodgers go again. I believe in Nightingale's his tweet was like, just a day or two after signing Tanner Scott for $72 million. Here the Dodgers have a tentative agreement with Kirby Yates. I loved Jack Flaherty responding to this on social media, said, a certain team is not ruining baseball. A lot of other teams are just doing very little. There was a fan who responded and said, hey, basically, you don't need to kiss up to the Dodgers. They're not going to sign you. And his response was a perfect one. Quote, kiss my ring was his response. So shout out to Jack Flaherty for that one. I bring this up in part, Anthony, because you and I have not gotten a chance to discuss this idea of the Dodgers spending and how that is impacting Major League Baseball. Is it bad for the sport, etc.? People have heard my thoughts, but I wanted to give you a couple minutes as somebody who has covered this sport in a bunch of different places. And while a Dodgers fan has had the experience of covering smaller market teams, i.e. the Milwaukee Brewers. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what the Dodgers are doing and the impact it may or may not be having on the sport as a whole.
Yeah. And this is why I was kind of listening to and watching a lot of other fan sites, podcasts, and watch some national things too. And some of it is just completely ignorant. I think we understand that. And some of it was solid. Like there were some pretty smart takes on there and some good perspective. I don't think this is a coincidence, but a couple of the Mets fan sites that I logged onto did a pretty good job of like taking a step back and going, it's not the Dodgers' fault. Like they're just doing what's being allowed, and of course, because someone who roots for a Steve Cohen-owned team cannot really bag on the Dodgers for spending money or going.
Just be mad that you did it way less effectively. Is basically all you can do.
Exactly. But look, and you all talked about this on Sunday with Matt and Blake. But the people that you need to be upset with if you're a fan of another team is your team. Yeah. It's your team. The problem with baseball is not the Dodgers spending. We're past the midway point of January, and they just went and landed 3 pitchers in the last week, less than a week. To tell me that they're just flexing their might here is false, because any of these other teams could have gone out. And, I sent a tweet out the other day. 30 teams could have had Roki Sasaki.
Yeah.
30 teams could have signed Scott to that deal. 30 teams could have signed Kirby Yates to whatever this deal might be. You know, there's a lot of organizations that could have gone out and got Blake Snell. I would say probably 20 at least. Yeah. Nobody did. And the people who cry about the super team stuff, look, they're putting money in everyone else's pocket.
Yep.
And
their owners probably like it.
Yeah, their owners are loving this. They're loving this. And again, the reason why you should be upset at your ownership and not the Dodgers is because there's a thing that the score came out with that was called like the Scrooge Index or something like that.
Yeah. Yes, I saw this.
Yeah, and it's where it's a calculation of that team's revenue and what percentage of that revenue is being put back into the roster. I want to say the Mets were first. If I recall,
yeah, I think the Mets were like the only team that they were actually spending more money than they were making, or something like that.
Their percentage is like 102% or something.
Yeah,
like that.
They were the only one.
Second was the Dodgers, and then at the bottom is like all the teams that you would expect: the Rays, the Pirates, the A's, and it just goes to show that all of these teams, all of these owners, they're getting money. Tom Ricketts.
Yeah.
They're all getting money. They're just choosing to not spend it. Okay? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we don't have, that was just such a joke of an interview, but, you know, and then if you're, and so that's the super team thing, is your team's not spending. They're not actively trying to be better and to give you a better product as a fan. The other part of this is parity, right? Major League Baseball has had 16 different teams in the World Series, I think, in this century.
Yeah.
No, the NFL and the NBA and the NHL, none of them have had half of their league.
Yeah.
Also, they have more playoff spots than Major League Baseball does. Also, as we all know, Major League Baseball is more of a gamble in the postseason. There's more randomness. So it's harder. And so when you add more teams, it makes it harder for whoever is the supposed number one team in the sport that year to make the final.
Yeah,
let alone win it. The other part of this is that the Dodgers, this has already been the case with this team, but it's going to be even more so now. They lead Major League Baseball in road attendance.
Yeah.
And I think this last year, I think Ken Rosenthal gave a stat that said, excuse me, for the first time since 2008, Dodgers on the road drew like whatever it was that they drew, but it was by far the most in baseball.
Yeah.
And so again, that gate doesn't go to the Dodgers just because they're the ones drawing the fans. That gate goes to whoever they're playing against.
Yep.
And so none of the arguments for like why the Dodgers are ruining baseball this winter hold any water. They're all bad. And again, it's a misdirection of people's frustration and anger, especially in this sport where there is no salary cap. Because it's your team not doing enough to be better or to be competitive. And then the other thing is, and I heard this on a couple of things today, mostly on the national side, but it's something that I think we've all kind of discussed in the past in some form, is that if there were a salary cap, the Dodgers probably are still in this position.
Yeah.
Because they do pretty much everything at a top 5 level in baseball,
right?
From amateur scouting to pro scouting to player development to like all of this stuff.
Yeah.
They're just so smart about every aspect of this that if you want to limit the other teams, also the team that's going to benefit from this is the Dodgers. You want to talk about, it's probably easier for this organization at this point to build a dynasty if you did put a cap and a floor in.
Yeah, it's possible. Tim says, if anything, the other team's fans should be overjoyed. The Dodgers spent so much. For every dollar they spend, $1.10 goes to other teams. Realistically, Tim, it's other owners are thrilled about this because unfortunately for those fans, they don't get to be overjoyed because that money goes straight into the pocket of their owner and does not get reinvested back into the team, which is the sad part, and which is why I understand the frustration that many of these fans have. But I'm with you, Anthony. Look, the issue here is other teams not spending. Everybody heard my 6-minute rant the other night when Matt and Blake, had to make sure I was still breathing afterwards. But That's the reality. That's the reality. And again, another interview we've got coming, Andy McCullough of The Athletic. We had him on the show. That's going to be posted probably Thursday or Friday of this week, but he's a national guy. And I asked him the same question and he had a really fascinating response. I don't want to spoil it, but check that interview out because that's a guy who covers the national game, the game from a national perspective, I should say, who has sources on lots of different teams and lots of different front offices. And I thought he had some unique insight. So again, is it bad for baseball? You can make a lot of cases. It's actually really good for baseball. It's just not bad for you. It's just not good for you if you're a Padres fan or a Giants fan or a Diamondbacks fan.
The Padres are one of the organizations fan base that are most in their feelings about this. Just because the complex the Dodgers have given them is incredible. Paper should be written about this, but they've spent $0. Not only do they lose Sasaki and Tanner Scott, they're not trying to go get anybody else. There's a handful of all-star caliber players on the market right now, maybe a little bit less now that Santander is gone, but they're not in on any of those players.
Yeah.
That's not
look, their situation's a mess, and we'll see. It could get uglier depending on what you believe about that Padres situation. So I don't feel bad for Padres fans necessarily, but it could get ugly down in San Diego. Let's shift gears here because there's one question that we've gotten a ton, and I've even seen it in the chat, which is, all right, Tanner Scott, not officially signed yet. Roki Sasaki, not officially signed yet. Kirby Yates, not officially signed yet. Where do all these guys fit on the Dodgers 40-man roster? How do we make all these pieces work? So here's where we're at. I want to give kind of a quick overview here as we ask this question. 40-man roster. Dodgers currently have 39 guys on that roster. I'll start with Sasaki because he's the easiest. Sasaki's technically signing a minor league contract. So whenever that becomes official, he will not be immediately added to the 40-man roster. They can do that pretty much at any point during spring training. They can just wait till essentially opening day to add him to the 40-man roster on that front. The good news for the Dodgers is once pitchers and catchers report, which is February 10th, the Dodgers can open up some space on the 40-man roster by shifting guys. That's the first day you can shift guys to the 60-day IL. Now, here's the reality. The Dodgers have 6 guys that will immediately be shifted to the 60-day IL. Gavin Stone, Kyle Hurt, Emmett Sheehan, River Ryan, Clayton Kershaw, who will be signed and then immediately transferred, and then Brusdar Graterol. That's 6 spots on the 40-man roster that will open up immediately. So all of a sudden, even with Yates and even with Tanner Scott and even with Roki Sasaki, if he were to be added, now all of a sudden we're at 36, and the Dodgers have plenty of room on the 40-man roster to work with. So then the question becomes, Anthony, well, how does this all make sense with the 26-man roster? MLB has a 40-man roster, and those are the only 40 guys that can ever be on your major league roster. But the 26-man roster is who's sitting in the dugout and who can be available used in any given day. The big sort of contract piece you have to know if you're new to all this is when a guy signs a minor league contract, that comes with 3 different option years, meaning there are 3 years that once you are on the 40-man roster, your team can send you down to the minor leagues. If you're out of options, the team's only choice, if they don't want you on the major league roster, is to designate you for assignment, which is basically to cut you and see if another team can place you on waivers where another team can claim you. So what can the Dodgers do on the 26-man roster side of things? There's a bunch of guys I would start off by saying that are coming off injuries and TBD. One guy we haven't talked about tonight, Michael Kopech, when the Yates signing was announced by Nightingale, he pointed out that Michael Kopech, who Fabian Ardaya later clarified had a forearm issue, could miss the first month of the season. So you've got that. You've got guys like Ohtani, who's going to miss the beginning of the season from a pitching perspective. He'll obviously be on the roster. Tyler Glasnow, we're not entirely sure what the status of his health is. Evan Phillips missed the World Series due to an injury. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Nick Frasso, all coming off of injuries. Even Roki Sasaki dealt with some injuries issues last year. So there's a bunch of guys, Kopech, for example, that very easily could start on the 15-day IL, which would open up a 26-man roster spot for one of these guys. The last data point I'll throw at you, Anthony, and then I'll stop talking here, is understanding options. I mentioned if you have no options, then you have to stay on the major league roster. Here are the pitchers that the Dodgers have that have no options remaining. Anthony Bonda, Ryan Brazier, Evan Phillips, Tanner Scott, Blake Trinan, Kirby Yates, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Clayton Kershaw, and Shohei Ohtani. Everybody else that's on the 40-man roster can technically be sent down to the minor leagues if the Dodgers want them. Now, some of these guys are really, really good and they're not going to get sent down. But even a guy like Alex Vesia, Brusdar Graterol are both guys that if they wanted to, they could send him down to AAA. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin can be sent down to AAA. So they've got 6 relievers who can't be sent down. Even if they go 6-man rotation, Ohtani being one, he doesn't count. You can have 8 relievers. So my point in all this to say, Anthony, is 40-man roster situation going to be cleared up here as soon as pitchers and catchers report on February 10th. And then they'll have some excess space, honestly. Yeah. The 26-man roster, going to get tight, but even with the Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott signing, because of some injuries and because of some options, it's maybe not as much of a constricted list as it seems on the surface.
Yeah, these things always tend to work themselves out. We see it time and time again. But I do think that there are some things that are probably on the horizon. I think you're going to have some of these guys who don't have options remaining. They're going to show up to spring training playing for their job. Yeah, I think.
So give me a name, because I've got a name on here, and I threw it in a group chat that I saw. My friend Scott is hopping on the same name that I threw out earlier. But is there a name on this list that jumps out to you? Because the Dodgers would love to replace guys that don't have options with guys that do. So is there a guy on this list that jumps out to you and said, I'm not sure 9 months from now, that guy's job might be safe?
The 2 that stand out for me are Bonda and Brazier.
Yeah.
And I think those feel like the 2 most obvious. I think if they could get away with it, maybe Brazier's first on that list.
Yeah.
That would be my gut. And then I think they may be dealing for things they don't need. Maybe it's cash, stuff like that. They may be dealing from that surplus, I think, before that opening day hits.
Yeah.
Whether it's out of the bullpen, whether it's out of the rotation. I think they figure out a way to start to clear this stuff up, because the DFA, swallowing that pill, I think, is the last thing that they kind of want to do. It's the last thing most teams want to do, because they don't want to just eat that money, even the Dodgers.
Right.
And so I think they're going to try to figure out ways to clear roster space aside from that. But yeah, I think from the guys that we're talking about now, we're just talking about guys who may not be here come spring, like May.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at probably Brazier is first on my list.
Yeah, that's the name I mentioned. And it's not that he hasn't been good. Like, I'm surprised every time I go look at his numbers, and it's like, man, he's been pretty good. The thing with Brazier is he's 37, so same age as Kirby Yates, a little bit younger, turns 38 at the end of the season. But it just, all of the numbers are going the wrong direction. Velocity was down last year. His strikeout rate was down last year. A bunch of the quality of contact stuff was going the wrong direction. And so he's owed $4.5 million. But the other piece here is we're talking about the value that there is on relief pitchers. Like, neither of those guys, in my estimation, would get cut. Both of those guys would be moved in a deal where the Dodgers are probably getting all of the money off of their books. Bonda's not making anything. Bonda does have this year and 2 more years of team control for what it's worth. But again, he's used all 3 of his option years. So 3 years of team control is valuable because he's not going to cost you anything, but you can't option him for what it's worth. So that's why I would lean Brazier. Maybe there's a team out there that doesn't mind the $4.5 million price tag, 1-year deal on a guy who has been pretty good. And if the Dodgers feel like they want just somebody in that role that has a little more optionality, and literally optionality, the ability to be optioned up and down, I could see that happening. But again, I want to emphasize having 6 guys who can't be optioned in a bullpen that in theory is going to be 8 men strong. Even if all 6 of those guys are healthy, which we're Dodgers fans, we know that's unlikely. But even if all 6 of those guys are healthy, there's still flexibility in the way that they move around that makes me think odds are they're going to be able to make it work. Is it possible at some point everybody's healthy at the right moment? There's sort of an aligning of the planets and the Dodgers have to make a decision. Yes. That just doesn't feel likely to me as a Dodgers fan.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think that they've been working this angle for a while now, probably. Probably I would say since at least the start of the new year. And now that they're getting these guys to agree to deals here, they're going to really go hard at trying to figure this part of it out in terms of, I think deals, there'll be minor, blips on the radar compared to what they've been doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're now, I think, in the business of clearing roster space.
Yeah. And they might, and at the same time, again, they can kind of survive probably for a little while here. Bob Nightingale, we appreciate you, Bob. Thank you for the report on Kirby Yates today, by the way. Hopefully you're right on that one. He says, is Kike a Dodger yet? He is not. Part of the reason, as we talk about this February 10th date, once guys go on the 60-day IL is when I think the Dodgers, my guess, I mean, we know pretty much they have a deal in place with Clayton Kershaw. We don't know the details, but I can assure you he will be signing shortly thereafter once they have the 40-man roster spot. My guess, Anthony, is Kike Hernandez is in the same boat. Obviously, on the position player side, there's just as much of a crowd with guys like Chris Taylor in there. But again, there's optionality. Ha-Seong Kim can be sent down to the minors. That was a clause in his contract. Pages can be sent down to the minors. So I think they could get Kike without forcing them to go make a move maybe they're not ready to make. But I still have Kike as not a Kershaw level lock to be a Dodger, but like I would say 75 to 85%, he's a Dodger.
Yeah, I think so. And on the position player side, they have a little more wiggle room here, I think, because of, players like Kim and Pages, like you mentioned. Yeah. So they don't have to make those decisions as soon as, I think, is the pitching side of it. So yeah, I fully expect within that first week of people reporting to Glendale that we hear Kike Hernandez news. I said this on the reaction show for the Sasaki deal, that Kike Hernandez holds value as a utility bench guy on a lot of contending teams, especially if you think that you're going to make the playoffs. And the fact that there's been no buzz around his name kind of tells me that everyone's been told, like, yeah, guys, I'm going back to LA. It's just a matter of, when they can get me on board.
See, and I'm not, it's possible you're right. My only pushback would be, I do think he's the type of guy that maybe as Dodgers fans, he has immense value to the Dodgers because of the clubhouse impact, because of the postseason success. But I sort of have to remind myself, like from an actual overall regular season baseball player, he's worth negative 0.4 wins above replacement the last 2 seasons. He hasn't posted he has 1 season with a weighted runs created plus over 86. You'd have to go all the way back to 2018 to find the second one. And the only other one was in 2021. So now he's put together 3 straight seasons of 74, 72, 83. He can be a utility guy, but I also wonder if he's just one of these guys that as a Dodgers fan, he has immense value to the Dodgers specifically. But like, if I'm another team in the league, I just don't know. Like, I see Dylan says Dodgers don't care about WAR in the regular season. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think other teams do, because other teams need guys on their roster who are going to help them win games and get to the postseason. Whereas the Dodgers just say, we really don't care what you do for the next 9 months, as long as you hit when we need it come postseason time.
Yeah, I don't think he has value for like the San Francisco Giants, right? Like I think he's got value for other teams who like have a roster right now that they believe is good enough to make the postseason. A lot of the problem with sort of like, let's say the Red Sox, was that they tried to use him as an everyday player, like a regular guy in their everyday lineup, and he's probably not that guy. Yeah, he's not that guy. There's no probably about it. He's not that guy. Yeah. But as a utility bench guy, he has value, and I think in that way he has value to more players than just the Dodgers, or I'm sorry, more teams than just the Dodgers. Now, we are going to value him more than I think other fan bases and other teams. Sure. But there's that's not to say that there's no market for him except for in LA.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that like there's just not been one rumor about him at all, I think says that like everyone kind of knows that he's probably returning.
Yeah, it could be. Look, there's multiple ways, and it could be a combination of both, right? It could be the teams checked in and what Kike is getting from they said, hey, here's what the Dodgers are giving us. And they're like, okay, we like you. We don't like you that much,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's get to some super chats here, and then we'll get to some questions. Jay Riff says, other fans had no sympathy for us during the McCourt era. No sympathy for them now. Might as well stockpile talent since we're already the bad guys. This is pretty much exactly how I feel. Anthony, like, you guys want to talk crap about Mickey Mouse ring in 2020, which I've said didn't bother me one lick, but you want to say that you want to crap on the Dodgers for spending money and failing, 2017, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, like, have at it. Now we get to feast. Now we get to feast because you all did all that for the last 7 or 8 years. And this is what you get. I don't feel bad now knowing how we were treated over that stretch of time.
No, and it's ridiculous because it was, Kershaw chokes every October. Yep. And then they laughed. And then it was the Dodgers choke every October, and then they laughed. And then Mickey Mouse ring, and they laughed. It doesn't really count. And then you got knocked out of the first round back-to-back seasons, and you got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks last year, and you had no pitching. Then you win 1 World Series ring, and you have 2 knockout off seasons, and now baseball's ruined.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. Well, and I even laughed, like we talked about this on the show we recorded earlier today on Kirby Yates. ESPN had a thing like the Dodgers are plus 300 to win the World Series. It's the lowest odds a team has had since 2007 when it was the Yankees. By the way, the Yankees didn't win the World Series, and I joked, if you want to know how long ago 2007 was, the Colorado Rockies were in the World Series that year. So, I mean, if you would have told me, Jeff, in your life, have the Rockies ever made the World Series? I'd say no chance. But apparently they did in 2007. So, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with the sentiment there on that one, Jay Riff. Kermit one with a good question here. Guys, if the Dodgers cruise into the postseason unchallenged like 2023, do you think it will affect their postseason play? The Dodgers had to make a run this year. You predicted they would win the division by 5 or more games. I believe what did they win by, 5 or 6 or something like that?
5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the closest division race we've had not the closest, they had the other one where they didn't win the division, but the closest it's been compared to some other years. This year, the Padres are worse. And everybody else is like, I guess the Diamondbacks are better, but like, cool. They've lost some guys too, but Corbin Burns, good for them. The Dodgers are likely going to win this division by 10, 15 games. Like, I mean, we're talking about a team that's probably going to win 105 to 112 games. Like, so is that a concern? Like, is that a big task on Dave Roberts' plate of how do we keep these guys dialed?
Excuse me. I don't think so. I think they found a nice formula last year with the break in the playoffs. Yeah. The difference is like they were probably playing more meaningful games like in the last 2 weeks of the season than they had been in the past.
For sure.
But no, I think what matters here is health. And, you go back and look back on it and you could say, sure, Mookie and Freeman were bad in 23. They didn't hit enough with runners in scoring position and all of the stuff.
Yeah.
But you really go back and you look at it and injuries really hurt them. And it really hurt them on the pitching side. Just like this year, they just overcame it.
Yeah.
But they were, this was like the 3rd postseason in a row where they were like searching and scraping the ground for starting pitching. Yeah. And so I think for them, it's a matter of health. If they can walk into the end of September with 4 of these guys healthy that are currently in this rotation, they're a tough out.
Yeah.
Because the reason they've been put out in the past, it was sure the offense needed to be better, but the reason was because they did not have enough pitching, not even close to it.
Yeah.
And so, when you got those kinds of arms and those kinds of horses pitching for you in October, you don't need to score but 3 runs or so, on the days that you're not good. And we know what this lineup looks like. When on the days that they're good, they're going to put up 10 and 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Against the best pitching that the league has to offer.
I agree with Blake here. He said, I think bringing in new guys who haven't won and stay hungry to win helps. Totally agree. And the other piece that I would say, and I know if Scott is still in the chat, he's going to love this. We all know that the 26-man roster last season was not incredibly strong top to bottom. I mean, we were talking about like, is Kevin Kiermaier going to make the NLDS roster last season? And that was like a real conversation we were having. The Dodgers, like 1 through 26, like this is why I think they really could threaten that 111 win total from a couple of years ago, is because even if they pull out some of their studs and try and rest them and give them a break, the guys that are coming in right behind them are dudes, right? Like it's like, well, okay, now it's Andy Pages is the next guy up off the bench, like it's okay. Now we're going to go down and get Edgardo Enriquez is going to be the fill-in reliever this year, that kind of a thing. I think they just have so much depth on the 26 and the 40 man that even if they pull that first wave of guys back and start rotating in some rest, as they might try to do, the guys coming in right behind him are going to be at an entirely new level, Anthony, than the guys they had last year filling in the holes.
Yeah, definitely. They're so deep. They're the players that they had last season that were filling into roles like Andy Pages. That's a really good example. This year are going to be like fighting for playing time, like this playing time period. Like there's not many platoon situations right now. Like Tommy Edmonds probably gonna, if he's their center fielder, he's going to play most of the time, right? Like, and so you then say, okay, Edmund or Mookie or Kim or whatever, you're going to get a day off, and then you get a guy like Pages is going to run out to center field and might hit 2 home runs in the game.
Yeah.
Like they're that deep on both sides of the ball. And
totally.
And you need a spot start, and it's all of a sudden it's Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May coming in.
Yeah. And Bobby Miller.
Bobby Miller. It's just it really is just an absolute gluttony of talent. And they didn't and they didn't buy it all.
Right.
They're the best organization top to bottom for a reason. They might be the best organization in sports.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with it. That's for sure. One last topic here I want to hit. Hall of Fame voting was announced today. One storyline that I just want to mention real quick. Ichiro was not a unanimous selection for the Hall of Fame. I believe it was, I'm forgetting the number now. I tweeted it out. It's like 300 and something people vote for the Hall of Fame. And one of them, 394 votes cast. One person did not vote for Ichiro. Super easy for me, Anthony. If 393 people think something is right and one person thinks that it's wrong, the one is wrong, and the one should lose their vote. Like I'm not like, if 10 people vote no, fine, but like one person votes no on Ichiro, and I know people, well, what if they thought 10 other people? I don't care. Like the one person who voted that Ichiro should not be a Hall of Famer does not deserve a Hall of Fame vote. Period. End of story. To me, Anthony.
I agree. And I've always said that I'm not a fan of the 10-year rule for these guys.
Yeah.
And this could never happen. Let me preface this by saying this could never happen because people are dumb, including the voters, like this guy who didn't vote for Ichiro Suzuki. So this could never be a reality. But I wish you could say everyone who's eligible gets 1 year on the ballot. There's no limit to the number of guys you can vote for. If you think they're a Hall of Famer, you vote them in the year that they're on. There is no, I'm punishing this guy for this, or I didn't like how he played defense, so he doesn't get my vote on the first year. It's stupid. You're a Hall of Famer the first year you're eligible, like you are the 5th year, like you would be the 10th year. Yeah. This whole, I'm not going to give Derek Jeter the unanimous vote because I didn't think he was a first ballot Hall. That's stupid.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer the next year, though. He was good enough for the second ballot. That's dumb. And so, you can't do this because voters are dumb. And then like a guy like, somebody who truly deserves it would not make it.
Yeah.
So, but that's always just been a silly thing for me. And I would love that if that were a real rule in my world, that guy who voted no would have to go or woman would have to go in to Cooperstown into the Hall of Fame offices and talk to Josh Rotich and say, here's my case for why I did not vote for that player that literally every other voter voted for. And you would have to sell that person or that committee that your reasoning's valid. And if they did not agree, your vote's gone.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And I think that's a fascinating idea. To your point, I don't think we can trust people with the system that depended on 1 year, but it would at least get people's motivation in the right way. And I see Blake in the chat saying unanimous doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because of idiots like this. Like unanimous should matter. Like there should be a mantle of, hey, these are the guys that first ballot unanimous. And that's a small list. Like an exclusive club, I think is a good thing. And it's a shame that a guy like Ichiro isn't on that list.
For sure. And Blake's right that it doesn't matter. And you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't matter because of these reasons, because of that person.
Right.
Like that's why it doesn't matter, because you could never count on it happening. Like it would matter if Ken Griffey Jr. got in, if Ichiro got in, if Derek Jeter got in, unanimously, because then it would be another level of the Hall.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that level doesn't exist because of the dummies who take the vote and want to play contrarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One other note that I feel the need to bring up twice a year when they announce the guys who are going to be on the ballot and they announce the guys who did or did not get in. I would like to make my case against Andrew Jones, who once again did not make it, and by all accounts seems to be trending in the direction of making it. But I just want to remind people that Andrew Jones, contrary to popular belief, actually disqualified himself from being a Hall of Famer, from being one of the greatest baseball players of all time, by what he did in 2008 as a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers. 17 years ago, Andrew Jones signed a contract paying him $18.1 million a year for 2 years. It made him the 5th highest paid player in Major League Baseball, behind guys like A-Rod, Manny Ramirez, Derek Jeter, and, wait for it, Carlos Zambrano, making more money than Andrew Jones that year. Shout out to Carlos Zambrano. He turned 31 at the beginning of that season. He was not old and washed. He's the same age that Ohtani will be this year, for some context. He played in 75 games as a Dodger after signing, like I said, the 5th highest paid contract in Major League Baseball. He hit 158 with 3 home runs, struck out 32% of the time. He was a negative 1.1 wins above replacement player, had a weighted runs created plus of 38 across 75 games and 238 at-bats. That was the 5th worst strikeout rate in the league, the 4th worst weighted runs created plus, the worst batting average, the 2nd worst slugging percentage, and he was the 10th least valuable player in Major League Baseball with guys who had as many at-bats as he did. He was so bad that the Dodgers cut him and paid him the rest of his contract to go away. He went on to play 4 more seasons, 4 wins above replacement. That's a disqualifier. At 31 years old, to be that bad after getting paid, it's a disqualifier. If at any point in your career, before the age of 36, barring a catastrophic injury, which he did not have, you put up the worst batting average in Major League Baseball across a large sample size of 75 games and 238 at-bats, are a negative win player, you are top 5 in strikeout rate, top 5 in lowest wins above weighted runs created plus. That's a disqualifier, Anthony. This guy never belongs in the Hall of Fame. End of rant. That's all I got. I don't like being mean to people, and I try not to hold grudges. What he did to the Dodgers in 2008, as DM says, those who witnessed remember and will never forget. That's a disqualifier. Disqualifier. You can't have that season at 31 to be that bad, Anthony. How can he ever? I know how good he was the 10 years prior. Okay, the wins above replacement, all of it. I get it. Age 31, signing that contract, putting out that type of effort and performance. Never a Hall of Famer in my book.
I was so excited when they signed him.
Totally.
Because I hate, the Braves were our hated team during that run. They were so good. And that was when the divisions were different. We were battling with the Braves. Hated that team and always wished I could like Andrew Jones. And then the Dodgers signed him. And I was so excited that he was going to come be that Andrew Jones here. Now we were going to watch him run down balls in center field and throw people out and all of that stuff. And it was just a big bag of throw up.
Well, I was going to say a big bag of French fries. Is that what Andrew Jones was eating on his way over to Dodger Stadium that entire offseason? Buddy put on about 25. I mean, he literally took cashing them checks. That was Andrew Jones' philosophy as a Los Angeles Dodger. At age 31.
His bank was next to McDonald's.
Unbelievable. Look, again, disqualifier to me. There you go. Andrew Jones. Apologies to his friends and family. I would say with all due respect, but and Dodger Blue, who among does not love a good bag of fries? Agreed. I don't get paid the 5th most money in the world to play a sport that tells me I need to put the French fries down every once in a while. If I did, at the age of 31, what's that?
There was no In-N-Out in Georgia.
That's true. Are you an In-N-Out fries guy?
I like In-N-Out. In-N-Out's good. I like the menu.
I think their fries are fine. Like I think if somebody wants to come at me and says the fries at In-N-Out aren't very good, first of all, I would say light well, order them light well, dramatically better than normal. Second, though, they're fine. They're fine. Like, and I'll offend some people here. I think Chick-fil-A fries are fine. Like, I think their waffle fries are fine. They're solid, but that's it. And Blake's an animal style fries guy. I'm going to go one step further. I think animal style fries way overrated. Just give me the regular fries, dipped in some spread, That's a better option for me. It's cheaper. Give me that. Give me that. So there you go. There's all my takes in one place, Anthony.
Okay, what is light well? Because sometimes we'll do, because my wife likes like really crispy fries, so sometimes we'll get them extra crispy. What is light well?
Light well is like somewhere between normal and well done. It's like halfway in there. Maybe there's medium well. I don't know, but light well is like cooked a little bit more than normal.
That's probably what we get then. Yes, and that's what we always get. Yeah, I agree. That's the way to go.
Yeah, so there you go. What you got a favorite French fry? A McDonald's, Wendy's, Carl's? Not Burger King. I mean, we know that we could just cross off the BK Lounge.
Burger King's awful. That's a good question. I don't know if I have a favorite French fry, like from a chain. Like there are a couple like local burger joints that have really good fries that I like.
You ever had fries from Wingstop, by the way? Wingstop has incredible fries.
I have not. Not.
Great fries.
Yeah, like I'll say this: these are not the best. I would never call these things the best fries, but there are the days where like I need some McDonald's fries.
Oh yeah, it's a classic. It's like sometimes it's like the touristy spot. They're like, oh, don't go that. It's touristy. It's like, you want to know why it's touristy? Because it's the best. You want to know why McDonald's fries are famous? Because they're freaking awesome. So I'm with you. Wendy's fries underrated. My goat, which is like the side down the side alley, is the crisp cut fries from Carl's Jr. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Money. So, I get the crisp cut fries and I dump them in till I can't dump them in anymore on the double Western bacon cheeseburger, and I put the top bun back on.
Wow. Double Western with crisp cut fries right in the middle.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have to get Moreno on that one to check that. He's the double Western guy over here. So there you go. Yeah, Enrico says from Andrew Jones to the best food chain fast French fries. First of all,
it was an easy segue.
Taco Bell fries, Splakes.
The chicken fries.
Well, no, they have nacho fries, but then now they have chicken that he claims is amazing. Which I'm open to the idea that he's right. By the way, I'm open to the idea that he's right. Matt is not open to the idea that he's right for what it's worth. But yeah, it's Taco Bell has nacho fries. You literally dip them in nacho cheese, and I don't know. I can't remember if I've had them before. So, anyways, all right. We got any baseball questions? Throw those. Okay, Scott loves their Nuggets too. Blake is just like, no. Somebody else likes them too. It's like, yeah. So let's see if we got any questions. Feel free to throw those in the chat. All caps questions. I did see somebody asking earlier about the Kopech news. We don't have a ton of information. Nightingale, again, who drops this bomb about Kirby Yates tentatively reaching an agreement with the Dodgers pending a physical, said, we joked about this earlier. I love Nightingale. It's like he breaks news about Kirby Yates and then he accidentally breaks news about Michael Kopech, as if everybody knew that Michael Kopech was going to miss the first month of the season. He's like, well, yeah, since Michael Kopech's going to be out for the first month. And every Dodger fan's like, wait, hold on. What? Say that again. Yeah. Bob, where did you get that? So Bobby Nardiah came out that he had some forearm issues last postseason, and he was able to pitch through them. They were not serious enough that he stopped pitching in the World Series, but that
Bob's so good he doesn't even know when he's breaking news.
It's true. That's why he's the GOAT, That's why he's the GOAT. So
if I've been out with Bob before, and the man, I'm not like, we'll be like, hey Bob, we're going to the bar tonight after the game. Fur coat, matching belt and shoes. Like a brim. Bob does not play around, man.
All right. Bob. Hey, shout out to Bob. There you go. It's a style everywhere he goes. Let's see. Ederico says, who are the odd men out after all the signings? I think it might be Grove and Outman. The two things these guys have going for them is they have options. So that's why I would lean somebody else, like a Chris Taylor as a guy that we've talked about them potentially trying to move. Or, obviously we talked about Ryan Brazier potentially. I've also said I'm skeptical that Ha-Seong Kim is just like being written in ink as a major league contributor this season. He might, but those are three guys that I think either could be moved elsewhere, or in the case of Ha-Seong Kim, might be a quote unquote odd man out on the major league roster this season.
Yeah, I think it's too early right now to have this conversation. We can guess, and that's fine. And I think that Ederico's guesses here are educated. I think those are fine. Like I said, I think this front office now works a little overtime to figure out how they can start to clear some space. And then on top of that, these things kind of have a tendency to work themselves out. So, I think this is probably a conversation that is obviously going to be easier had, halfway through spring training, because you're going to understand who's not going to be ready for opening day for one, and who's no longer on the team for two.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Some more questions here. Dave said, is Fan Dodger Fest canceled this year due to the renovations? Somebody, Blake or Matt or whoever's in the chat, can answer this question. It's not canceled.
It's in the parking lot, right?
It's in the parking lot. I'm blanking on the date, and it's $20, I believe. What's that?
I think it's February 1st.
Okay. Somebody in the chat will help. I believe it's $20. Some of that money is going to go to wildfire relief funds as well. Blake tweeted it out. Thank you, Blake. We're looking for it in the chat, bud. Don't send us to your Twitter. You're trying to make us click through to another page. February. Thank you, Laura. February 1st, Laura says. So Laura helping us out where our guy Blake couldn't help us out. So shout out to you, Laura. Some more questions. Jason wants to know, has Nick Ahmed signed with an NLS team yet? He's doing the loop. And does Biggio get a ring? Biggio does get a ring.
Biggio gets a ring.
Yeah, lots of guys get rings. Lots of guys gets a ring. If you were, I mean, Biggio, I guess, played a little. If you're Biggio, how proudly are you displaying that World Series ring in your house, Anthony? Is it if people ask, you're like, yeah, I got it back here? Or is it yo, 2024 World Series ring, check it out?
No, man, people got to ask to see that thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The problem is no one's ever going to remember you played on that team.
Right. Totally. They're going to ask questions. They're going to be like, you were on the Dodgers? Yeah, don't look up the batting average. Don't look up the batting average. All right.
They're going to be like, what was it like in Yankee Stadium for Game 5? And he's going to be like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Pete says, does a trade for a center fielder make sense so that Edman goes to short and Mookie to second? I think if this is the route they want to go, which I think it might be, they don't need to trade. Andy Pages could play center field, and I think he's a better option, as I've said, than a guy like Ha-Seong Kim, who many people are penciling into second base. So I could see a world where Pages is the starting center fielder, Edman is playing second base, Mookie's playing short, because that's just what the Dodgers have said they're going to do. But I could see a world where Edman is in the infield, I guess is my answer here. So I don't think they need to make a trade, because I think they have the pieces to move around otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think any of this happens by opening day.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to yank Mookie around like that, before the season even starts. I think they're going to give him a shot there. And if they really feel like they need to make that move, then he'll move to second. Edman probably comes into short, and then you throw Pages in center field, and you just kind of figure it out from there. The outfield is really bad defensively in that situation.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that's the least of their worries at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think they give Mookie every chance to fail there before they pull that ripcord.
Young Yi wants to know, who could fill the long reliever role? All the current bullpen arms are basically 1 inning relievers. This is an interesting question. I think it's a fair one, especially when you've got guys that aren't necessarily known for going deep into games in your starting rotation either. Here's the good news. The Dodgers have the cheat code of Shohei Ohtani on their roster, which means he can count as one of their starting pitchers and not count as one of their 13 pitchers. So they can carry 14 pitchers essentially when Shohei Ohtani is pitching. That means they can go to a 6-man rotation and still have 8 bullpen arms, which I think is going to be a help. So that 6th starter, depending on how the schedule works out with days off and stuff, could be a swing sort of pseudo long reliever, pseudo starter when the rotation, if they got a bunch of days in a row. That's one option. I think it could be Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Michael Grove, one of these guys that are starters.
I was going to ask you this, Jeff. Yeah, I was going to ask you that kind of question. Does it make sense to you to keep one of these guys who is kind of he's a starter?
Yeah.
Maybe it's Gonsolin on the roster, fills in for that long relief role. And then he's on the roster for the spot starts.
Yeah. Again, the thing that you have to remember is going to a 6-man rotation. The goal is to get a guy like Yamamoto or Sasaki to Ohtani to be pitching on that sort of a rhythm. It's not every 5th day, it's every 6th day. Well, keep in mind that if you've got a day off mixed in the middle, then you can have 5 guys pitch, but basically you're simulating a 6-man rotation without needing 6 different starting pitchers. And so I think the point you're making is how this could play out is I think if it's a guy like a Dustin May is maybe the perfect example where he can sort of waffle between starter and reliever at various points. And if they've got a 3-week stretch with a couple days off mixed in where you don't really need a 6th starting pitcher to get guys 5 days off in between starts, then May becomes a reliever for a couple weeks. And then all of a sudden, hey, we got 12 games in a row. Boom, Dustin May makes 2 starts over that stretch. So I think it makes sense. I think Kasparius could be a guy. Robleski could be a guy. I mean, like, I don't think those are the highest end, but I think those are dudes that you've at least seen versions where it's like starter/reliever. Like Michael Grove, they seem to have moved fully to reliever. We've said on this show, like, even the people that are highest on Michael Grove, i.e. me, are like, can we just let this guy be a 1-inning guy? He does pretty well when it's 1 inning. He does really bad when it's anything more than that. But he wouldn't fit, I don't think, like the quote unquote starter role if they needed that every once in a while is the problem.
Yeah. This is going to look a little different than it was last year because we essentially saw what a 6-man rotation looks like. It just, they didn't have a designated 6th guy necessarily, but like, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I saw something that until Flaherty got there, no one in that rotation had pitched on 4 days rest. Yeah,
there was some I'm remembering the stat, and I don't know if it was nobody, but it was close.
Yeah. So we've already kind of, been shown what that could look like. I think maybe now they have a little more consistency to it, and it's more of a actual 6-man rotation, per se. But guys like Gonsolin, May, Robleski, I think give them a little flexibility in how they actually maneuver it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to a couple more here. I like this question from Derek. If you had a chance to ask one question during Roki Sasaki's press conference, what would you ask him? I think for me, having read The Athletic and sort of the process that he had as far as asking other teams about like why he struggled the way that he did, that kind of a question. Like I would just try and get to like the why behind that from his perspective. I'd also be curious, like, how did you select the 10 teams that weren't invited? These questions aren't questions he would answer, but if we're talking about questions I would love to know the answer to, those would be some things that pop to mind, Anthony.
Yeah, if we're expecting him to tell the truth, I would ask him when he knew he was going to be a Dodger.
Yeah, fair. Totally. Yeah. I mean, maybe another question is like, again, will he tell the truth? But there's been a lot of talk about like, is it a plus that Yamamoto and Ohtani are on this team? There was some speculation that it might not be a plus, some speculation that it might be a neutral. Like these are all things I'm just curious. The assumptions have been made about, but I'm just curious if the assumptions were correct.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, those got put to bed when I read the Athletic TikTok story on here's how this all went down. And we saw that Ohtani was I think they called it, he was driving the bus or something like that was what they said, in terms of like the players recruiting him.
Yeah.
So I think any question mark there, I think that put a hush to that for me. The whole thing though about like giving the teams homework, I really did think that was interesting. And it's really easy to see it from both sides. Like if you're his camp, if you're him, you want to know like how would they plan on handling you? And from that story, he was most engaged when they were talking the art of pitching, the mechanics of pitching, all of that stuff. But if you're the other team that had to do that and put in that time and those resources to create that pitch, I mean, this is part of it. This is part of the deal. But like to answer that specific question, yeah, I'd be a little pissed if we didn't get chosen and we, and we were asked to do that. Yeah, because that's not a normal thing. And then you wonder, like, okay, that's essentially IP.
Yeah.
And so you're wondering if he's now going to take that information that you gave him. Maybe there are pieces of it that he liked, and he gives it to the Dodgers.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, shout out to our guy Daniel Starkin, the MLB account on Twitter just retweeted our guy Daniel at the Lakers game, posted a picture of Roki Sasaki and Rui Hachimura, and our guy Daniel getting a shout out from at MLB on Twitter. So good for you, Daniel, doing the Lord's work over there covering the Lakers tonight. We got 3 more questions. Eden wants to know what happens to guys like Gavin Stone and River Ryan when they come back. They deserve a chance, but I'm not sure if we have room for them. Do we know the specifics of Stone's injury? Both of these guys are going to be done for the season. Neither of them will be back at any point. Emmett Sheehan is one of the names to keep an eye on as a guy who might come back midway through the season, but Stone, Hurt, and Ryan, I believe, are expected to be out for the entirety of the year. So again, Emmett Sheehan would be the interesting name to keep an eye on. I would note a guy who was ahead of all of these other pitchers prior to getting injured, as far as first guy to get his chance in the major leagues, was successful as well. But the reality is the Dodgers, we mentioned them, May, Gonsolin, Kasperius, Robleski, Bobby Miller, like there are Landon Knack. There's a bunch of these guys. They have depth. Now, if they have a catastrophic string of injuries like they do last year, Anthony, they might not have enough depth, but we'll see. Right now, it's a good problem to have where they've got 10-ish guys that if you needed to start at a major league level, you wouldn't hate the guy that you're throwing out there. Not to mention Jackson Ferris and guys like Nick Frasso, guys that maybe we haven't even seen yet who could be on this list by the end of the year.
To answer the question, though, like when they do come back, they are going to be like those 2 guys in particular are going to be given a chance because I think they still see both of those players as part of the future.
Last question here. Hector wants to know which starting pitchers are in the rotation at the beginning of the season. So Ohtani will not be in the rotation. Clayton Kershaw will not be in the rotation. Those are the 2 that we know for sure. I think Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto, locks, right? Mm-hmm. From there, you got options. Roki Sasaki, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Bobby Miller, all the young guys I just mentioned. Who do you have filling out? Let's say you get 6 spots here. So again, Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Snell, locks. Who are your other 3?
Yeah, I think it's Snell and Yamamoto to start. I think they get those 2 Japan games. And then if we're filling out with 4 other guys, Glasnow,
3. Yeah.
Glasnow. I do think Sasaki's in that first rotation. Gonsolin, I would say. And then I need one more.
Who you said? Yeah, you're at 5.
Yeah. Then I guess it's Dustin May. I'm not leaving. Who am I? Am I leaving any obvious guy?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Somebody in the comments correct us here. I'm gonna say Sasaki. I don't think is going to be a starter opening day rotation. So I'm going to throw in a name. And it's a name that I've actually been fairly critical of at times, but was talking to a guy who's plugged in, who knows, who's connected to the Dodgers. And he said, keep an eye on Bobby Miller this year. He said, Gavin Stone had a rough year, his first year up in the major leagues. Bounce back last year was awesome. We know he's got the stuff. We know he has the velocity. We know he has the mindset. It's just a matter of if the confidence level can be there. And so give me Bobby Miller as a guy that I wonder if the Dodgers give a chance early in the season and if he can run with it. Because this is a guy a year ago, we were making some bold predictions and there was somebody on our show was like, I don't know, is Bobby Miller competing for a Cy Young this past season? And it was a bold prediction. So this wasn't something we were saying was likely, but it didn't sound totally crazy either. So give me Bobby Miller. I think they slow play Roki Sasaki. I've mentioned a couple times Lance Brozdowski. That will be posted in the morning. He has some interesting thoughts on Roki Sasaki, and I tend to agree with him on a lot of those. So check out that interview. But that's maybe why I would not have him right from the get-go. I wonder if he's like a reliever in one of those Japan series games. It feels like I'm sure MLB would love to have him appear in one of those games, but I don't think he's going to be built up to be a starter necessarily or ready for that workload. But so maybe he's a relief pitcher to start the year.
Yeah, I think he finds an inning in Japan.
Yeah. So there you go. Good question. We just got a super chat. So we'll throw the Laker Toby says, hey, Anthony, first of all, are you okay? Get some rest, brother. And also, can we get some more Dodger gear in the fake background?
Yes, this is my actual home office. I've said this before. I just have I've taken a picture of it, and so I can use it anywhere. But yes, you're right. I will say this. I can commit to this before the games in Japan. All of this will be there'll be some new stuff up there. I already have it. I just haven't put it up yet.
See, the good news for you is you don't even have to have it permanently set up. You just got to get one photo shoot going with Dodger gear everywhere. And then everybody else in the house, kind of, okay, now put that stuff away. And we're not taking up a whole room with this. My wife has to live with, this permanently on display. I need to make sure my wife doesn't find out about this fake background situation. She says, can't you just take a picture of that and then just leave it? And no, we got to keep it. We got to keep it.
Laker Toby is correct though. And I appreciate the love. Thank you. I will, I'm definitely going to get some rest and get some juice or something when we hop off of this.
Yeah. Or something.
Hey
everybody, we appreciate you joining us as always. Nearly 2,000 people in here on a Tuesday night, folks. We are a couple, 2 or 3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers beginning the quest to defend the 2024 World Series. It is great news, and there's tons to talk about, so thanks for being here with us. Again, Lance Brozdowski interview posting in the morning. Check that out. Blake and Scott will be back here live on Thursday night, and then an interview with Andy McCullough of The Athletic coming at you later this week as well. Tons of content. If you're new, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. If you're listening via podcast, Apple, Spotify, or Google, go ahead and subscribe, rate, review, comment. We would greatly appreciate that. We love interacting with some folks on the podcast side of things. You can follow Dodger Blue 1958 on social media. Check out DodgerBlue.com for all the write-ups on the latest news and notes. You can follow Anthony at A. Witrado or myself at Jeff Spiegel as well. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. As always, go Dodgers. And still champs!